You've all got your books with you. But
Very
I've got the audiobooks.
You know what? That's all good. You can play a little snippet for us.
Yeah.
So welcome everybody. I know it's been a long time since our last live show, but that's okay. Life gets in the way. No worries. But yeah, so this live show will be covering the discussions for CALIBAN'S War and ABADDON'S Gate. We will have a brief no spoilers bit, but because it's a discussion, we are planning to get very much into spoilers. We'll have a spoiler section for CALIBAN'S War and then a spoiler section for ABADDON'S Gate. So we will let you know when those times are. But a little non-spoilery, just reaction, overall feels. Kaz, I know this was your first time reading them, so how about you go first?
Very much loved both of them. This series is just really high stakes all the time, so it's kind of like an intense experience reading these books, but in a really good way. I love that I met my new favorite character in CALIBAN'S War. Christian Azzarella is an utter queen. Like, literally the first page she came on, I was underlining and annotating. I was like, who is this woman? I adore her. So that's one of the biggest selling points on this one for me. She was just absolutely brilliant. And I think this is probably my favorite in the series so far, Abaddon's Gate, the third one. It feels like this is the point where things are really opening up for the world, and I wasn't sure where things would go, and this was a lot. And I read it in one day, and it was
Yeah, it's funny. I had a similar experience with you, Kaz.
Yeah.
So this was a reread for me. So I read CALIBAN'S War a couple weeks ago, and I love CALIBAN'S War. It was funny because I think the first time I read it, I liked it, but I didn't love it. Like, I love the characters, but I didn't love the story as much. But then coming back to it, there are so many things about this book that I just love so much. Mostly Prax. I love Prax so much.
Oh,
I love Prax as well.
Avasarala is great, and I love, we get so many good characters. We get Avasarala, we get Bobby, and we get Prax in one book, and it's awesome. But then last week, I just got off my last Wheel of Time book, and those are long and they're very hard to binge. So I was I don't know if I'm gonna have enough time to reread this one, but I did, because I sat down and read 350 pages in one day, which I didn't expect to, but it just reminded me why this is one of my favorite books in the entire series. It's just it reminded me of those television episodes where it's they'll be going off and doing stuff, but then they'll have that one episode that's in one place, like a bottle episode, where it's just super intense in one location, and that's the vibe of this book. And I love that. I love just having a bunch of people in one location and having shit go down. And that was
so they were rereads for me as well. So CALIBAN'S War is my favorite in the series of the 5 that I've read, and it was the same on read. I just love it, all the characters, especially Avasarala. And I don't know, I just really like the kind of story, and I guess we'll talk about the story later. But then ABADDON'S Gate is interesting because actually the first time I read it, I didn't love it as much as the other books. So I think it was more of a 3.75 star. But then reading it again, I definitely liked it more. So more 4 stars. It's still not my favorite in the series, but I do really I feel I appreciated it more the second time around. And it does read more like a thriller almost. And what Blake was saying about, I like it when all characters are contained in one environment. I don't know. I just read Into the Drowning Deep as well, and they were on this ship, and there's evil mermaids, and and the same in Rhythm of War as well. So I just love that kind of setting. And I think it's executed very well in ABADDON'S Gate. You can feel that kind of tension, and it all comes.
Well, let's jump into some spoilery discussions, because there's a lot to discuss in both books. So this will be the little spoiler section for CALIBAN'S War. So leave now if you don't want to be spoiled. So, spoilery thoughts for Caliban's War. Kaz, because this is your first time, what were your reactions? Just a little bit more in depth, and then also the end, because I would if we had like a live show only for this one, I would have asked you what did you think the ending meant, but then it goes more in depth.
Yeah.
What were your initial reactions to a certain person?
I wasn't expecting. I was really annoyed because I flicked to see how many pages I had left, like 20 pages to go, and then I saw the last line. I was like, "Oh no, what does it mean?" But luckily, it wasn't like I wasn't spoiling myself too early on. I didn't understand how it was possible. I was very confused. Obviously, thankfully, jumped straight into the third book very quickly afterwards, so I finally could kind of understand what was happening with Miller, if it really was Miller. But I was like, that's a spanner in the works. Oh my god, this was such an intense book. It was very interesting because obviously, like, I think this is my favorite overall in terms of all the characters we follow, but then this one was like the story that I loved the most. And I think the reason why this wasn't my favorite of the series is compared to book 1 and 2, the climax of the story just didn't have as much of as big of a punch as the other ones to me. I'm not sure what it was. They just because a lot of the stuff like happened far off, and they saw a lot of conflict happen on other ships and seeing it happen rather than it happening immediately to them, if that makes sense. But I don't even know where to start. Like, there's a lot to discuss.
Yeah, so let's break it down by character. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
So we have Holden and the crew, and there's a lot going on there. Let's start with Prax, because I think Prax's story is kind of the one that thrusts the entire novel. So we have Prax and his daughter May, and his daughter is abducted, and we have the search for the missing daughter, and then he joins up with Holden. What do we think about our little biologist?
Oh, I love him. I always love I don't know if ecology is really the right word, but like botany and stuff in space. I think it's so cool. And then like living on their little planet, well, it's not planet, moon, whatever, Ganymede, with their like little stations. I don't know, I just really like it.
Yeah,
even though it all goes wrong, but
it goes so wrong so badly.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about I think the series is because we don't stick with a set like we change perspectives every single book, and so I think by doing that, like, you get so much subtle world building just in who the characters are. Like, we got a lot of like the information about how the outer planets live and like are like fed and stuff through Prax. Like, we got a lot of more information about Mars and like their like psychology and everything through just Bobby's like Martian, like, her marine training, and then through Avasarala we get all the politics and stuff on Earth, which we didn't even get an Earth perspective in the first book, except for Holden. Didn't really count.
Not quite the same.
Yeah, I think it's really good as well how they like balance between having, like, especially with Prax's character, like the very kind of human story, like how emotional it is that his like daughter's been abducted and stuff, but while still kind of having that like big epic sci-fi feel and like the politics as well. I think it's just a good like, so you get the like really human characters, and then you with these big like storylines going on. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but I think by having like different main characters in each book, you get more of a sense of like these are just people like living their lives in this world, and they're just being pulled into these like devastating events.
Exactly. And then you're not exactly sure if any of them are like guaranteed to live, because they're not. So
that was very stressful. I completely agree with what you're saying, Katie, and I feel like with Prax's story as well, like obviously following Holden and Miller, they have a lot more resources and ability to follow their leads and take pretty big action when something is happening and someone they love is in danger. But Prax, for like a good chunk of time, it's like months that he's stuck on Ganymede, and like he feels so helpless, like he's doing everything he can, but he's still like just kind of withering away. And he, again, that really human story, my heart just like broke for him every time we got his perspective. And then I really loved when he joined Holden's crew, just seeing him kind of come out of his shell more and have the ability to follow along, and just he was just so set on May, and I was so happy with the outcome of that. I was, because especially with, like, you know, in book 1 it's all about Julie Mao, and it ends kind of horribly. So I was really worried that was going to happen again here to this poor child, innocent child. So I was so happy when she was fine. And just the two of them were like, she like refused to ever leave her father's side again. She would kick up a fuss.
May is adorable. And you know, we do have, you know, the connecting plot. So we'll talk about Bobby and Avasarala, and then we'll talk about their big overall that ties everything together. So Bobby, we get our perspective from the Martian Marine, and honestly, I think one of the best opening chapters for a character, because so fucking intense and sets her off on a course for the entire series. You know, with that first monster attack. So what did you guys think when you first, because like the protomolecule was more kind of like an alien disease, like it was kind of weird, but then in this we just straight up have like a monster. So like,
I think it's quite interesting how it like changes, and I guess with the next book as well, it's kind of always like shifting. But I thought it was cool that they have like the monsters, and it almost adds an extra layer of like mystery, especially since you kind of find it like very early on, or is the prologue even, that there's now this change. So the whole time you're thinking, oh, what's causing this? Like, why have we now suddenly got a monster type thing?
Yeah, and I really like people can be, you know, like James Holden is a boring character, but I don't think just because like he's the person who always tries to do good. His perspective is just he's very self-righteous, which gets him in trouble all the time. But like, you know, when you don't have information and these protomolecule monsters are showing up, of course he thinks it's like, you know, going to be another Arrows, and he's so paranoid. And his experiences from the first book are obviously influencing him. And even Naomi, she's like, Holden, calm the fuck down. Like you're
exactly.
But yeah, like just so many crazy things, and then especially, you know, we have like the whole corporate plot kind of come to a relative close in Caliban's War, because humans tampering with aliens, it's gonna happen.
Obviously gonna go well for them.
And then we have all the politics. So let's get into everyone's favorite character to simp over, Avasarala.
She's so iconic.
Yes, and like I'm just so glad that we had her character, because I'm like with like really high fantasy books, I'm always intrigued by the politics, but I wouldn't necessarily want to follow a lot of the politicians per se. But she was just such an iconic personality. I love that, like, she was still manipulative, but in kind of all the best ways. She's very intelligent. She knows how to play the game. Obviously, she still gets fucked over in some ways that she doesn't expect, but she always just knows how to handle herself. Oh my god, just the sass though, like, like
and all the F-bombs.
Oh my god, she just doesn't give no fucks. And who was it? What was his name? All of the instances with. At first, I actually really liked Soren and kind of the back and forth between Avasarala and Soren. So I was really upset how that turned out. But just every.
But let's talk about my favorite unexpected pairing, Bobby and Avasarala. They're such an amazing team.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, two strong women and it worked like, yeah, that was a very, very unexpected kind of pairing, but I think it worked really well. I just love the scene where, who was it? One of the crew was talking to Bobby and she was like, yeah, everybody hates Avasarala, but they're like, but you like her. It's like, yeah, I like her.
She I have one brain cell and I will protect her at all costs. But like I think one of my favorite moments, honestly, is when like Avasarala is lured onto Jules Pierre Mao's ship, and she's like, I got this, I know the game, I know how it's gonna play. And Bobby's like, no, like you don't understand. And then at a certain point, Avasarala's like, well, yeah, I'm kind of fucked. Bobby, can you save me? And she's like, let me put on the suit, I got you.
Yep.
Okay, like, who would win in a fight though? Bobby in her power suit or Iron Man? Because my bet's on Bobby Draper. Like
she is unstoppable.
I love that when she's like just running down the elevator shaft and like in the corridor, she just like bullets. What are they?
They ain't gonna do nothing.
I feel like I have to confess now, I've never watched Iron Man or Marvel films. I have watched WandaVision, but that's the only Marvel. Oh, and Loki, but they're the only Marvel I've seen.
You know what? That's okay.
That's fair. I get that. I was very late to watching all of them anyway myself, so.
I feel like they're very easy to binge. It's like a long running TV show. You can just throw it on and just. But yeah, I think are there any more aspects of Caliban's War that we would like to touch on? I mean, we have Holden and Naomi's relationship get a little deeper in this book, and that I did really like that, especially a lot of the touching moments.
I actually really like especially in sci-fi and fantasy when there's almost kind of, I mean, I know they're not super established, but like relatively established couples. I always quite like that. I don't know why, but yeah. Because I feel like so often you finding like you get the story of like the meeting and falling in love, but I really like it when it's like they have to work like as a team, they're already a couple, and I don't know. I like that.
Yeah,
also,
I agree.
Brief mention, one of my favorite supporting characters who just pops up every now and then, and I love him every time he's on screen, Arjun and Avasarala's relationship is the most important thing. Like, because you have like she's super
such a balance to her hardness, external hardness. Such a softie.
I'm not exactly happy what they did with him in the show, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like, they cast him perfectly, but then they like recast him for no reason, and the actor that they recast him as was just not as good.
Oh no, that's disappointing.
But
I was just gonna continue tangenting about Naomi and
please
Holden. Because one of the things I think I mentioned in the first live show was I loved how open and communicative they were, even before kind of getting together. Like, it was just such a good base for a relationship, and that I love that stayed true. Like, when Holden was being Holden to the nth degree, Naomi didn't put up with that. She gave him an ultimatum, was like, you're going down a slippery slope, dangerous path here, and I can't be with you if this is where you're going. So I really love that she really stuck her ground, because it would have been such a hard thing to do, to see someone you love kind of going down a really dangerous path where there probably he would have eventually gotten to the kind of the point of no return. So I really appreciated that, and how that it didn't it wasn't necessarily that forced Holden to change, but it was a big factor in it. There was other things in play there as well. So I just overall love their relationship a lot.
Also, I just really love that Holden number one, he didn't like Miller in the first book, but then he's still like being influenced by Miller and his ideas throughout the second book, but like being in denial about it the whole time. And it literally took Naomi to be like, stop, for him to be like, I am kind of acting like Miller, like maybe that's not
Yep.
And speaking of Miller, let's get into book 3. So if you have not read book 3, we're going to discuss it in depth with spoilers. So
yes.
Goodbye. But yeah, so there's a lot more Miller in book 3, or something taking
Miller.
in quotation marks. So let's talk about that.
That was very interesting. It made a lot of sense. It was kind of like, you know, the influence of Miller was all throughout Caliban's War, but now he's physically there and over. Was worried that poor Holden was
any sense.
No, he was just absolutely babbling on about nonsense, and Holden was just like, "What does it mean?" But once again, I'm glad that he talked to somebody about the fact that he was like being haunted by this pretty significant ghost from his past.
I mean, he told, it happened off screen, but like he told Naomi right away.
Exactly.
And Naomi was the only person he told at first, but like their relationship just kind of grows just like so subtly, I think, and it's amazing.
Healthy communication.
Yes, we love it.
Like keeping secrets together as a couple.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And oh yeah, go Cass.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I was hopping back to the Miller thing. If you wanted to touch upon anything else, or okay. I thought it was so interesting just how blatantly it was thrown in Holden's face that he interpreted things so wrong in terms of thinking that Miller and like Julie Mao was driving him purposefully into the ring, and that was like an intention. But Miller, when he got there and kind of Miller was there again on whatever the station thing was, he was just like, "No, why are you here? You shouldn't be here." And Holden was just like, "Oh fuck." That was kind of comical, like, because Holden just gets stuck on an idea and runs with it. He doesn't kind of think about it in a broad analytical sense sometimes, a lot of the time, and that really kind of bit him in the butt here. So that was kind of amusing in a horrifying way.
I mean, he's just so self-important, and I think it's funny because it's almost kind of a subversion of a lot of the like typical action heroes and that kind of stuff. Because like, somebody like James Bond or something, they do reckless shit, but like the audience is supposed to empathize with them because they're always right and they know what they're doing and they're special and whatever. And then Holden is doing the same thing, and everybody's like, no.
No. You got the wrong idea here.
And then speaking of secrets, going back to that, we have kind of our first hint, and I know Katie, I think you know about some of the secrets, but when Monica and her crew come on board, they all kind of shun and force Holden onto them because they all have secrets. So Kaz, as a first-time reader, do you have any suspicions about what some of the crew might be keeping to themselves?
I don't know I don't have any specific suspicions, but I was like, oh, duh, because I think in the first book, I think that like that whole idea that the people that were working on that ship together must have done something, or like things hadn't quite gone right in their career paths and they ended up on that ship. Like not everyone would have intended to be there. So I think it was like kind of alluded to early on, but I just completely forgot about that fact and I was like, oh yeah, what's all the juicy goss? And I'm like, I'm kind of scared to find out what Naomi is hiding just because of how strongly oh no
it'll be very important, I'll just say that.
Okay, but it's also just because, you know, Holden and Naomi are very open and communicative about, I would have assumed, most things, so that's also just like this one big thing that she feels like she can't tell Holden. That has me very anxious.
I think throughout sorry.
No, I'm just saying, your anxiety will only go up. But
okay.
And I think, especially on rereading the series, you realise that how much kind of foreshadowing, and not even foreshadowing, like subtle hints about stuff that even in the early books that come more relevant in the later books. It's just, there's so much of it. And I think you appreciate it a lot more, like on reread. It's good.
Yeah. For me on a reread, the thing that I am finding myself enjoying the most is the proto-molecule stuff. Like, it gets so insane in the later book, like conceptually and some of the stuff, and so seeing like the beginning of the seeds and like the blueprint of like the overall overarching plot, it's kind of insane to me, but in a great way. But anyways, let's get into to Abaddon Gates plot, because there's a lot of plot in this book. A lot of great characters too. I actually, like, one of my favorite characters in the entire series is Anna. I love Anna so much. She is just great. I loved every time she's on screen. And like, I don't know, I find that oftentimes when authors write like religious characters or characters who are super religious, it's either kind of ham-fisted or like almost like a caricature. But like with Anna, I really loved that she's like, just, I mean, obviously she's a pastor, so she's a believer, and that informs everything that she does, but like she is like very practical about a lot of things, and she's not like trying to like, you know, convince people to come to her faith, but like she wants to like use her faith to help people. And like I think her plot with Clarissa is my favorite thing, just because it has the most arc in the entire book.
Oh my god, that was a literal roller coaster ride following Clarissa.
Oh, it's funny because like my feelings on Clarissa have completely changed from the first time I read it. So yeah, I don't really know what I can say without like future books, but I do think she has a really interesting like arc in this book, and like it's that kind of those characters that almost like you love to hate, like, you know, they're bad and they're doing bad things, but then you're just like, you can't help having a little soft spot for them.
Yeah, exactly, because she's so driven by this hatred for Holden, for the like kind of the consequences of his actions, and what that's meant for not just Jules Pierre Meow, but the entire family. Like, it's had a pretty significant domino effect, and is, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what her mental state was like before, but it's very much not in a healthy place in this book.
Very much not so.
No, and kind of seeing, because you also see it descend quite significantly throughout the course of the story as well. And just when we first met her, I was like, okay, interesting, where's this going? And then when, you know, the bombshell kind of drops that she's like wanting to destroy Holden, I was like, oh, okay. This is, then I was just like following all the other perspectives. I was like, but where is she now?
It's like that lurking threat.
Because it was so kind of separate from the threat of the proto-molecule and protogen and politics. Like, it's this one individual person who has a very strong motive that's so separate from everything, but ended up being such a significant influence on how everything played out.
Like, literally, high key, it's all Clarissa's fault. Like, she blew up the Sengun and then blamed Holden. Holden went through the ring, everybody followed into the ring, and then like everything else that happened after. So I mean, for better or for worse, it's kind of her fault. Okay, just getting into bigger, what did we think of the ring? And like the whole slow zone and the center, because it's a very different setting than like the rest of the solar system that we
I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really cool how they play with, like, I guess I like the whole playing with like the kind of speeds and like time and things, and like this sudden, I feel like it really added to the kind of like thriller elements when the ship would suddenly like slow down, and it's like this big change, and it just, I feel like it really added to the tension and like the kind of feeling of like, I'm so scared.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because it's kind of, obviously you have the proto-molecule, which was very much unknown, but they immediately saw the effects of it and what it was doing. But with this ring, they're kind of like, what does it all mean? And there's kind of a lot more unknown about what where it came from, why,
Mm.
and like
Is
Anna was
that-
trying to Anna was trying to find out what it actually means.
Mm. It's like venturing into the unknown.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And because the rules are completely different, and one of my
Yeah.
favorite things, like they think they know what the rules are, and then the rules drastically change.
Change. Yeah.
And I think that was one of the most moments of just like total horror in this book is when
Oh my god, yeah.
the Martian Marine threw that grenade, and then every single ship just like sudden deceleration, and
Yeah.
like Anna wakes up and there's just bodies everywhere and people are floating.
Oh my god.
It's insane.
And it was another one of those things where I was like, because you start in Anna's perspective after the effects, like after it's happened, and you're like, but what happened to everybody else? Because literally, if they were just walking in a doorway, they could have been sliced in half. Like there was nothing that they could have done to know what was coming, and it just depends on where they were in that moment if they would have survived or not, which is horrifying.
Yeah, it's like that kind of power of space and how scary it is.
And like you didn't even figure out what happened to the crew of the Rocinante until Melba like got onto the ship and was like strangling Naomi, and like Amos and Alex are like in the med bay and like.
Oh my god, that was very terrible. I was not prepared for Naomi to die.
Did you think that she could have?
Well, I knew that Anna was following Clarissa, so I was like, okay, she's got to catch up some point. She's got to catch up at some time. But obviously, she was hell bent on destroying everything, and that she was like in the middle of her rage moment. So I was like, it's just very, very scary.
Yeah, she roared it out. Well, let's touch on somebody that we haven't talked about yet. Bull and the OPA ship, the Behemoth, and Michio Pa and Captain Ashford.
I love how there's like these big scary bads with these alien technologies and beings influencing everything, but there's just so many horrible humans. Not always horrible humans. Sometimes they just go off the rails and are very, again, set on their own path. Ashford was just
yeah.
I really felt for Bull because of the whole situation. Like, it was politics was the reason why he wasn't put in charge by Fred Johnson, because of who he was and where he comes from, and people probably wouldn't have listened to him, which is unfortunate because when you give the mic to someone else, you don't know what they're going to do with it. Sometimes they will hold on for dear life, and that's exactly what Ashford did. It caused so many problems. Like, they would have been fine if he just stayed in his cell. Would have been fine.
Yeah. That whole back half of the book, because like, you know, it's like everybody's coming together onto the Behemoth because, you know, they're all injured. They start the drum, and you're like, oh, they're finally coming together, and then you get, you know, fucking Clarissa is just like basically in a coma. She's like, you know, she's like just staring at the floor, and then you get like people coming in and out, and you hear the whispers of mutiny, and you're just like, oh fuck, no.
Yep.
Yeah, and that whole climax is just fantastic.
I was going to say as well, like in this book, it is like going back to that kind of, it's the kind of humans and the human like nature that is always the villains. Like obviously the protomolecule's there and is a big driving force, but the kind of climax like comes and it's the kind of humans that are causing problems.
Yeah, it's all we're fucking shit up again.
Yeah, that's honestly like a very much reoccurring theme throughout the entire series. Just like you know, when I was reading the books for the first time, because I was reading them as they were coming out, and like something that I was kind of annoyed at, I was like, I want the protomolecule, I want more answers, I want more aliens. But like rereading it, you do get like a decent amount of like the alien stuff, but at the same time, it's the humans are the most compelling part about it, and like their relationships with each other, and just how like stubborn they are. And I think that is just the most fascinating thing. Also, just I love these characters, and like they will be coming back. Some of them I'm not going to tell you guys because Kat, you don't know, and even Katie, you don't know some of the people who are going to come back. But like there are characters like within these couple books, or like, soon, that will be coming back eventually, and it's very satisfying.
Okay, good. Well, because that was one of the things that I was very sad about with Abaddon's Gate. I didn't have Avasarala's voice, which made me very sad. And I was also, but I also loved how like there's a few like they still have their influence and like name dropped both Avasarala and Bobby throughout it, which I really appreciated. So yeah,
like you still kind of know they're like there in the world doing their own thing.
Yeah. But it makes sense that they're not there because of their whole roles and
one thing I think that the show does really well is it actually like Bobby, Avasarala, and like these characters that we've met kind of in the narrative, and they have their own kind of subplots. So like at the end it mentioned that like the UN guy, I forget his name, the Secretary General. He was like deposed, and like Nancy Gao was put in his place, and he was like, oh yeah, it's basic, like it's Avasarala, and then they're like, Anna's like, who? And then they're like yeah. That's good. Like the fact that you know her and she's the most important person on earth, that's
she's good at what she does.
The show definitely has a lot of and actually this season of when they adapted Abaddon's Gate, I think was the most interesting because it was the most divergent, I think, from the books, because the first season took place the first book was the first season and then half of the second season, and then book 2 was the rest of season 2 and then the first half of season 3, and then they fit all of Abaddon's Gate into the last couple episodes of season 3. So
interesting.
They like ramped it up. So like a lot of the side characters are not in it. Like Bull is kind of folded into some other characters. Michio Pa is also like folded into another character. And then Sam is not in it at all, which is sad because
I was offended
when Sam died. Just
but it was like also similar with Surge when they just like they happened to come up against someone with a gun and they didn't like them. They didn't like how the conversation was going, and they were just. They couldn't even fight back. Oh, it hurt. It really hurt. I wasn't okay with that. Also, it took me a while to realize that Sam was the same Sam that Naomi knew.
Yeah.
For some reason, I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. There's so many characters that you meet in this series. It's hard to follow.
Yeah, and so I think the show actually does a good job about kind of like reducing that number. And it's interesting though because they changed the one thing that they changed in the show is like the mutiny plot. It's not as intense. And
isn't Ashford's character in the show as well? Isn't he kind of a bit of a different? He's a completely different character. Yeah.
I actually like Ashford.
Yeah. Well, I think the first time, so I'd watched the show before I read the books. So I think the first time I read Abaddon's Gate, I thought when we like first meet Ashford in the book, I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna like him because I like him in this show. And then you just quickly realise that
no,
he's an asshole.
Oh wow, yeah.
So it's a good adaptation because of the different things that they changed and add and everything. But it's insane. But then for books 4 and 5, they have a season per book, so it's more back to normal. Speaking of book 4, which will be our next read, I know Katie's already read it, but Kaz, do you have any theories?
Well, they've kind of opened up the world, the universe.
The universe.
Yeah, and like obviously at the end of the book, you can see, there's a few ships that are staying behind to monitor things and to probably send out probes into the different gates to see what's out there. So I think humans are gonna be leaving the galaxy a little more, and who knows what they're gonna come up against, because a lot of the gates the gates that were forcibly closed didn't reopen, right?
There were ones that were like nuked, and those are just one.
Okay, cool. Because I was like, that sounds terrifying. So I don't what I just love the fact that Holden and his crew just always try to like take a few jobs and then go across the galaxy where everything is away from all of everything happening, and they just keep being drawn back into it. So I'm like,
That's literally the entire plot of the next book. There you go. They're like, we're gonna go over here, and then it's like, oh shit, wait.
Yeah. I do think book 4 is a really interesting book though, just with like the kind of setting, and it's
a totally different vibe of
Okay.
Yeah. But so because the state of the universe has changed, how do you think the Belt, Mars, and Earth might react to that? Because we're gonna have different reactions, very different reactions.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because of I don't know who's. That's a very good question.
who's going to come out on top.
Yeah, I was like, I think I'd have to think about it a bit harder to see who would do what, but I don't know who would do what.
Because I guess.
Oh yeah, you go.
It's like they're kind of fighting for control of. I guess it's similar to how it's like fighting for control of the ring, and now suddenly you've got the whole universe to explore, and it's like who's gonna have the claim?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
why they call it the Expanse. But
because I can't remember who left ships behind, or if it was everyone, or if it was. Because I think I specifically remember Mars leaving a ship behind.
I think the Mars scientists left a ship behind, and then the behemoth was left behind.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, it's not a spoiler, but the behemoth becomes Medina Station.
Okay.
So it's gonna be like.
I also think it's quite interesting in the books, because in the show, quite like main character. What's her name? Cara. Drummer. Yeah, she's not really in the books until I think she does come up later.
She was mentioned. She was Fred Johnson's second. So she kind of takes the mantle of Bull in the show. Like she's Bull's character. Also kind of takes Michio Pa's character. So Bull and Michio Pa are kind of the same in the show. And then she also ends up taking Michio Pa's character in later books too. So she's just kind of like an amalgamation of like a couple different characters.
Okay.
But yeah, they do that a lot in the show. But it kind of works though, because it's less for you to keep track of.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question, but I feel like the OPA feels like they have so much to prove, which I think could put them into making some pretty dangerous decisions. Because in comparisons to Earth and the Belters, like they're trying to show everyone that they are a legitimate like governing body. Which is a lot of what happened in book 3. They were kind of like, no, we have to go in as well, otherwise they won't take us seriously. So I think that's going to be a roll on and continue. It's like,
very excited. I'm not
just not reacting.
But yeah, it'll be very interesting. And yeah, so for our next live show, we'll talk about it, and we will, let everybody know when that will be more ahead of time. These last couple months have just been kind of crazy across the board for everybody. So, we might do another double live show. We'll see how it goes. But yes, be sure to follow along with us. And then Jewel will be returning for the next live show, and then we might have another guest. So stay tuned. And anybody have any final thoughts, remarks?
Just that the titles are just always so good in the series. Yeah.
Spot on.
Kaz, do you have anything else?
I I just feel like I will cry. I want to cry about everything. It's very intense in such a good way. I'm scared to see what happens. Like I'm terrified of where this series is gonna go.
The later books, I will just say I have cried. And
Okay. Ooh.
that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say as well, one thing you mentioned about it getting very conceptual in later books is going to be, I think, really interesting because we get a hint of that with Miller explaining a few things in Abaddon's Gate, and I had to read things a couple of times to really wrap my head around it because it's
like Holden's vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has his like galaxy spanning vision.
And he's just there in the nude.
Like, hey guys.
Yeah, so I think that I feel like it could, who knows, I don't know where it's gonna go. It could take some very interesting turns, I feel. So
yeah, one of my favorite things I think about the series is it's not really predictable. Like I feel like with some series you have like the big bad, you know, the dark one or whatever, and like you know that the overarching plot is gonna be that they have to beat it or whatever. But in the Expanse, there's just constantly so much mystery that like you never really know. And also, they've done a very good job, I think, to give each book a very distinct feel. Like the first book was like a mystery noir type thing. The second book was more of, I don't know, war. Like we had an all-out war in the second book. It was intense. And then the third book, you know, more of a confined thriller. And then the fourth book,
Wild West.
literally, the fourth book is kind of a Western.
That's really cool.
Like
so
just
cool.
they play with tone and it's insane. But yeah, I'll be excited to read the rest of the series with y'all. So
excited.
Bye everybody.
Bye.